We've talked about a number of issues. We talked about funding. You said you could do with more funding, especially for your manpower and all of that. But going forward, in the next 2-3 years or so, what kind of NBS would we be looking at? Where do you see the NBS being 2, 3, 5 years down the line in terms of the data they produce and how the government can use that in terms of national development?
Well, in terms of corporate strategy program, which covers the next 2 years, and in terms of the current national strategy for the development of statistics, which is basically our guide in terms of improving statistical development in Nigeria, we are trying to improve the quantity and quality of data. I think in a couple of years, you'll find that many of these perception problems that you're referring to changes. It's a gradual process. When people start to see that the MBS is operating independently, it's not influenced by government, and that's actually what you will see nowadays, because if the MBS can state that unemployment is rising, can state that poverty is rising, then obviously this is not an organization that is being manipulated by the government, because otherwise the government will get you to do the opposite if they're actually influencing you. So an independent MBS whose volume, quantity and quality of data improves significantly. In terms of advocacy, getting our government, both at the federal, state, local governments, to use statistics for evidence-based policy, because I always say that no matter how brilliant your program is on paper, if it is not informed by accurate statistics, it might not achieve the results that you want. So if you look at a program on paper, it looks very, very exciting, it looks very, very logical. Unfortunately, because it wasn't based on the problem, it will result to be that it will not be as efficient as you expected it to be. So we have an MBS that will be consulted in terms of before any program policy is designed in the country to ensure that the problems have been tackled. That's part of one of our mandates, advocacy. An MBS that plays its coordinating role as far as the state statistical offices are concerned, getting state governments, like I mentioned, to use data in driving their policies. An MBS that gets a lot of debate, even by the public. The numbers we produce are not just for government. Government is our biggest user, yes, but numbers that will be used by the public also to assess the performance of their government. Numbers that are used by researchers to design research papers. I think that's the MBS we are looking at in the next couple of years.
Okay, Dr. Kale, let me just squeeze this one right in before I let you go. Now, one key indicator that many countries, particularly the developed nations, and I believe the developing nations too, should also focus on that, is jobs creation. Just how many jobs we're creating, perhaps on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. Now, we do know that this administration has that as its focus, creating jobs. We hear about all kinds of numbers or projections that the federal government has in terms of jobs creation. Can the MBS handle that? Can we have a quarterly report on jobs data, knowing just how many jobs are being created, and then we can now look at just how well, whether or not our unemployment rate is going up or going down. So when we see an unemployment rate of whatever figure, we can then tie it to, okay, yes, this number of jobs were created, or this number of jobs weren't created in the economy, perhaps in a month or in a quarter.
Absolutely. I guess that's basically the mandate of the National Bureau of Statistics. When you say, can we handle it? We have to handle it. That's what we have been created to do, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We intend to be tracking job creation on a quarterly basis. Previously, we did it annually, but the reason why we want to do it quarterly now is because it's of huge importance to this particular administration, and this administration that says we need to track this more regularly than we used to. I mentioned earlier that because data on jobs wasn't tracked more regularly, that's why the unemployment rate has risen to as high as it is. Because if you have a situation where you track the numbers in 2000, you did not track it until 2005, they did not track it in 2010, you get 2010 and you find out that, oh, a lot of things have happened between those years. I now realize you have a much more serious problem on your hands. But if you are tracking this more regularly, it is easier for the MBS to send a message to government that says, you know what, this problem is rising, I think you better look at it and resolve the problem. But if there's a gap between years in terms of important data like this, the problem already arises before you now start taking measures to tackle it. So we are going to be doing this on a quarterly basis, subject to available funding, and I've mentioned that we have support from government for this. Not just unemployment, we're going to be tracking poverty levels, we'll be tracking business, the number of jobs being created by business, looking at the number of graduates coming out looking for employment, looking at what qualifications those that are unemployed have, those that are getting jobs, what their qualifications and so on. So the government helps the government to plan what sector to create more jobs in. If you create as a government 100,000 jobs, and all the jobs are, say, in, I always use this example, aeronautic engineering, and you have no aeronautic engineer looking for jobs in Nigeria, you have 100,000 jobs created, fantastic, but your unemployment rate will still rise because the people that are looking for jobs are not aeronautic engineers. So you have to first know who are these people that are unemployed, what jobs do they seek, the graduates from universities, what are their qualifications, what are their skills, and then you target your policy, your program to get jobs for these people. This is exactly why I said these numbers are very, very important. Otherwise, you have a fantastic program, you create jobs, and you find that there's not enough people to take those jobs. In several sectors, you have, you hear them, for example, in agriculture. You ask a typical businessman in agriculture, he will say that he doesn't have enough people. So in that sector, they are underemployed. He's looking for more people to fill jobs. But you don't have, but you go to another sector and they tell you that we don't have enough jobs for the number of Nigerians involved. That's because, so you go to agriculture, there are too many jobs, not enough people to fill it. You go to another sector like manufacturing, there are not enough jobs to fill those that want to work in manufacturing. So this is the kind of balance that you created when you have the right data that can tell you where and where not to create jobs and in what quantity.